Codominance. Written by CurlyStar09. Read for you by Gemini Wishes. Chapter 8. Bakugo's Son. Their second year in UA, Bakugo realized that Kirishima was his son, shiny and bright, a warm presence when he needed him the most. Always there, making his days clearer. He didn't understand why it took him so long to realize that he actively looked towards Kirishima when he needed someone. He was never one to ask for help, much accepted when it was offered, even less being around people in general. Yet, with Kirishima, it was so easy. Everything was so easy when it was with Kirishima, so much so that it scared him to his core in a way that he couldn't put into words. So, during their second year at UA, Bakugo realized that Kirishima was his son, and he decided to hide from Kirishima. It was easy to avoid someone when they were both busy. Internships, training, and classes take up most of their time, making it hard to have more than a few minutes to spare, even rarer to be alone together. A part of Bakugo told him he had to get used to being without Kirishima. It was only a matter of time before Kirishima realized that he was wasting his time hanging out with Bakugo. Or worse, Kirishima would see right through him, see the feelings fluttering inside of him, and then Bakugo would lose his son forever. The hardest part was how dark his days felt without Kirishima. Even though he had purposely changed a few things on his schedule so he would have the least amount of days off that matched up with Kirishima's own, it was as if there was no reason to even have a day off at all without the redhead around. Bakugo needed to be around that bright smile and carefree attitude to recharge, to feel whole once more. He knew Kirishima had his dark days. They all did. After everything they had seen and been through, it would have been worrisome if he didn't. He kept that in mind, keeping an eye on his best friend in order to be ready if he needed to step in to help. It was just, he needed to get used to being without Kirishima, because the day Kirishima wasn't by his side anymore, he wouldn't be able to have that warmth and comfort ever again. It was just a matter of time before Kirishima found someone he liked, and Bakugo would just watch. It was just a matter of time until Kirishima got tired of his bullshit, and then he would be alone again. That was the plan he followed for months, and even though it was hard, he was able to keep his distance. No matter how much it ached to not be around Kirishima, Bakugo needed to learn to be without him. There was a lot he had gotten used to, and he needed to break those habits. He found it almost impossible to study without the redhead next to him mumbling to himself and tearing his pencil apart by biting on the end of it. Learning how to train alone once more instead of having Kirishima to spar with. He needed to relearn to be on his own. That was the plan, and he needed to be ready for when it happened. Everything went to shit with one phone call. It was a Tuesday night. Bakugo was already in bed when his phone started vibrating. He picked it up, with every intention to swear and curse at the person on the other side for calling so late. But he stopped short when he heard Fat Gum's voice. His blood turned cold as he listened to the pro-hero explain.
Red Riot. Kirishima got hurt during patrol. Villain ambush. He's in surgery right now, and it looks bad.
Bakugo didn't wait for any more information. His heartbeat was loud in his ears as he threw on some clothes and rushed out of his dorm room. The whole way to the hospital, he tried to remember the last time he had seen Kirishima, the last conversation they had had, and he could think of nothing. It had been a long time since he spent more than a couple of minutes with his friend, and now... Bakugo felt the tears filling his eyes at the thought that he would never get to see Kirishima smile ever again. Never hear him laugh or complain about math, or... The list was so long and never-ending. He had been preparing for Kirishima to leave him, but not like this. Never like this. He arrived at the hospital in record time. Fat Gum greeted him with a sad smile.
He'll be glad to know you're here.
The words were a dagger to Bakugo's heart that was breaking with every second without knowing anything about Kirishima's condition.
What happened? What the fuck happened?
Was all Bakugo could say, trying to understand how his best friend ended up in the hospital.
It was a villain attack. Nothing out of the ordinary, just that their quirk was out of control. Some type of trigger drug, and a lot of destruction followed.
Fat Gum ran a hand across his face in frustration.
A building came down on him. He was getting people out, and he went back in to make sure no one was left. It was... Why would you let him go in? Why the fuck did he go in?
Bakugo screamed.
The thought of a whole building falling on Kirishima making him panic, not caring about the stares he was getting. Fat Gum shook his head. I couldn't have stopped him if I tried. The words made Bakugo freeze. He knew Fat Gum's right. Kirishima would have gone in to make sure no one was left behind, no matter what anyone said or did to try to stop him. So Bakugo waited nervously with Fat Gum in the waiting room as the minutes ticked by, and he could do nothing but regret the time he had spent avoiding his best friend. He still isn't sure how long he sat there waiting, and the whole night was a blur in his memories. He remembers a doctor approaching them, the relief that washed over him when they were told Kirishima was out of danger, running down a hallway without giving a shit, because he needed to see him. He needed to see that red hair, that pointy-toothed smile, those red eyes, and he needed to see his best friend, be near him, hear his beating heart and the rising of his chest. He had walked into the room and found Kirishima asleep in the hospital bed, a machine next to him beeping steadily, marking his heartbeat, letting Bakugo know that it was still beating, making the blonde tear up once more as the fear that had been gripping his heart released him. He almost fell to his knees at the sight, but he needed to get closer. He walked over to his best friend, a hand fighting a bandaged hand with a light touch, terrified of hurting the redhead. I'm sorry, Bakugo whispered. I'm so sorry. His tears spilled as he stood there next to his best friend, the boy he loved, and all he could do was apologize. For pushing him away, for not being there to help, for not having his back when he needed him the most. He apologized for a lot of things that night, while his best friend was still out on the anesthesia from the operation. Bakugo was pretty sure he passed out, exhaustion finally winning, while he was still filling the room with his apologies. When he woke up the next day, the first thing he saw was Kirishima's bright smile, and Bakugo knew that from that moment on, he would do his best to always have his son next to him, even if that meant just being his friend and having to push down every feeling in his chest. Akio, Bakugo echoed, tasting the name on his tongue. Yeah, Kirishima said with a shrug. It seems fitting, don't you think? Bakugo stared at the ceiling. He could feel his heart swelling as a thought formed in his mind, and he couldn't shake it off. He had 2 sons now, clear and bright, one of which needed him in a way he never thought someone would. I like it, Bakugo said before adding just above a whisper. Kirishima Akio. Kirishima made a choking noise. What, you want him to have my last name? Yeah, is that a problem? Bakugo asked, feeling self-conscious. They hadn't discussed what last name the kid should have. He just assumed. No, I liked the sound of Bakugo, Akio, Kirishima answered with a nervous laugh. Bakugo sat up then, looking at Kirishima with a frown. The fuck? Are you insane? Kirishima Akio works better. You know that if we give the kid my last name, everyone is going to think that you're going to take my last name as well, right? Kirishima challenged. People are already assuming that we're married. That means we would have the same last name, isn't it? Bakugo's mouth went dry at the idea. He opened his mouth and closed it as he tried to make his brain work once more. So fucking what? Fuck what people think, he mumbled. Kirishima got up from the floor, stretching his arms over his head with a sigh. We can argue over last names tomorrow, but just to double check. Our kid's name is Akio? Kirishima smiled brightly. Bakugo couldn't help but grin back as he stood up as well. Yeah, Akio it is. Hero Humor Support Chat. Only cool kids. Rock. We have an announcement. Taser. Bakugo finally learned how to stop being a grump. Boom. Get over here and find out, dunce face. Sticky. He will never learn. Upside down smiley face. Vinegar. What's the announcement? Hands. Also, when were you going to tell us you were dating? Hypno. Oh, this is going to be good. Rock. We aren't dating. A lot is going on right now. Steel. So you two don't have a kid together. Taser. Popcorn emoji.
Ears.
Share the popcorn, Denki.
Rock.
We can explain that later.
Steel.
Bro, are we not bros anymore?
Sad face. Sticky. Crying emoji.
The bromance is dead.
Taser.
Oh, the bromanity.
Taser.
Get it? Like, oh, the humanity?
Hypno.
And here we thought bros were forever.
Boom.
For fuck's sake, you assholes don't know when to fucking stop.
Boom. Sent a picture of Akio smiling brightly, his hair in disarray. Boom.
Meet Kirishima Akio.
Vinegar.
OMG!
Ears.
That is such a good name.
Hands.
Look at him. He's so precious.
Sticky.
No murder in the name? Eyebrow raised emoji.
Hypno.
That's a bit of a letdown.
Pondering emoji. Steel.
Look at the little bro.
Rock.
You need to come to meet him in person, bro.
Steel.
Sure will.
Boom.
That was all we wanted to say. Now fuck off.
Taser.
Oh, come on. Why did you send this to the group chat then?
Kirishima let out a sigh. The group chat was still going crazy, but he ignored it. He sent some messages to Tetsu explaining the situation a bit. Not a lot of detail, but just enough to clarify a few things until they had some time to get together and talk. That wasn't what was worrying him. Ashida was still blowing up his phone, and the more he ignored it, the more she was going to blow when he finally answered. Kirishima took a breath. Bakugo had gone out to the store to buy some things they needed for lunch, and Akio was taking a nap. He had no excuse to not call her. The phone rang twice before Ashido picked up the phone, her voice almost cold.
Oh, you can talk to me now? This is a good time? If not, you can go back to ignoring me.
Mina, I'm sorry. It's just...
Kirishima tried to explain, but he had no excuse for leaving her unread.
It's fine, Kiri. But what happened to knowing where you stand? You told me you were going to keep it platonic. Then the next day, I see a picture of you kissing the guy you've been in love with for 10 years.
7 years, Kirishima corrected.
Don't pull that BS with me, because I know you were at least crushing on Bakugo during our first year. At least. And that's me being nice. Who organizes a rescue for someone they don't have feelings for? But whatever.
She told him with a small huff.
Also, how does that make it any better?
We had to do it, Mina. How else could we explain the fact that we had a baby together? Later on, we can just pretend to break up or something. We just need this to work for now, Kirishima explained in a rush.
What about you, Kiri? Are you sure this is the best thing for you?
Ashido asked, her voice full of concern now.
It's not about me, Mina. It's about Akio. He needs us to do this, and I'm not going to run away just because I can't get over my feelings for my best friend.
The line went silent as the weight of Kirishima's words settled over both of them.
You need to talk to him about this. All of it.
Ashido told him.
You are going to end up getting hurt, and I know that's the last thing Bakugo would want out of this.
I don't want to risk losing him,
Kirishima answered, his voice breaking on the words.
We've had so many close calls already being pro-heroes and...
Kirishima, those are just excuses, and you've told me all of them before,
Ashido said softly.
If you really want to get over Bakugo, you need to tell him how you feel. Once that's out in the open, you two can go on from there.
Kirishima let out a breath, closing his eyes at the thought of confessing to Bakugo.
I can't.
Just think about it, all right?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Bakugo let out a small sigh.
Al, move, you stupid little fucker.
Alboruto stared at Bakugo. He was lying right in the middle of Akio's cot, staring up at him as if offended. The little fuck refused to let Bakugo put the kid down for the night, and Kirishima wasn't being helpful.
You know, if we had built the crib as soon as it arrived today, Kirishima chuckled, cutting himself short as he turned to glare at him. The fact that we still need to finish painting means jack shit to you, Bakugo told him. Move Al out of the cot. Nope, not doing that. He scratches, Kirishima told him as he took a step back. Bakugo looked at Kirishima with utter disbelief. Don't you have a quirk that makes it impossible to be hurt by fucking bullets?
Akio started crying then, startled by Bakugo's booming voice.
Ah, shit. Sorry, Akio.
Bakugo apologized as he held him closer to his chest.
It's all right. Everything is okay,
Kirishima added, stepping closer, a hand wiping the baby's tears away. He looked up at Bakugo, his breath hitching as he noticed a couple of inches between them. Bakugo's eyes were on his not even a second later, but Akio's crying broke whatever spell seemed to have locked them in place for that split second.
What do we do?
Kirishima asked, turning to look around the room for something to soothe the baby.
I don't know. We just fed him and he has a clean diaper. I scared him and I don't know what the fuck we have to do.
Bakugo's words rushed out in a panic.
Cats breathe, Kirishima told him,
hands on his best friend's shoulder.
We just need to think. What helped you calm down when you were a kid?
Bakugo looked at Kirishima, blinking twice before his eyes dropped down to Akio, who was still crying his little heart out.
I think I have an idea,
he said as he sat on his bed, repositioning Akio so it was like he was half sitting on his lap. Kirishima sat next to him, waiting patiently as Bakugo hushed the baby softly. The redhead smiled fondly as Akio's little hand tightened around Bakugo's shirt, his wide eyes looking at both of them.
A story should help, right?
Bakugo said as he looked at Kirishima, who just looked at him with curiosity.
My dad used to tell me stories before bed. It helped me sleep. That's manly, Kirishima said with a smile.
So, Little Red Riding Hood and such?
I have a better idea,
Bakugo said with a hint of a grin. Akio had calmed down a bit, whimpering instead of outright crying, turning his face to hide against Bakugo's chest.
Hey, little Pebble, it's all right,
Kirishima told him.
Do you want to hear a story?
Bakugo asked Akio as he rubbed away a trail of tears with his thumb.
This is the story about how your dad and I kicked some villain ass butt back when we were in high school.
Guts, Kirishima said with a slight chuckle.
What is your plan here?
Bakugo just shrugged.
Kid has to learn he has the best dads around sooner or later.
Bakugo started his story, telling Akio about one of their first missions together. It hadn't been anything big, just a robbery during a patrol. The villains hadn't put up much of a fight from what Kirishima remembered. Yet, the way Bakugo told the story, it seemed completely different. Akio listened wide-eyed, as if hanging on to every word. Bakugo went into detail about the fight and explained techniques that Kirishima was sure the kid didn't need to know, but he said nothing. He was also engrossed in the story, in hearing Bakugo's rough voice speak so softly. It felt weird hearing about this mission like this, made into a bedtime story for their kid, and it was working. As Bakugo kept talking, Akio's eyes grew heavy until finally they fluttered shut, his breathing evening out. Bakugo gave Kirishima a wild grin, his eyes full of pride, whispering,
"He's asleep."
"I can see that," Kirishima replied.
"Let's put him in his cot now, so that we can get some sleep too."
Bakugo nodded, standing up carefully. Akio readjusted himself in his arms with a small sigh. As he got close to the cot, he remembered how it had all started. Al was still lying in the cot, looking as peaceful as he could be.
Bakugo let out a groan. "Move the damn cat, eh?"
Kirishima let out a laugh before quieting himself after getting a glare from Bakugo. A warm feeling settled around his heart as he moved Al out of the cot, making sure to take the top blanket out so that Akio wouldn't sleep on top of cat hair. Bakugo placed Akio in, a soft smile on his face as he patted the baby's hair down a bit.
"Good night, Akio,"
he whispered. Kirishima couldn't help but smile, one of his arms wrapping around Bakugo's shoulder to pull him close.
"Thanks for doing this with me,"
he told the blonde, and he meant every word. No matter how much it was going to hurt when this all ended, he was glad he got to see this side of Bakugo. Bakugo leaned against him slightly, and Kirishima just hoped he couldn't hear the way his heart was beating.
"Nothing to thank me for," Can't imagine missing out on this.
Bakugo gestured to Akio. They stayed like that for a while, neither of them moving as they watched their kids sleep. Bakugo couldn't help but feel that this could be more, so much more, if he just turned around and admitted to what he had been hiding for years.
Well, good night,
Kirishima told him, pulling away from Bakugo.
I'll see you in the morning. Gotta finish that nursery.
He finished by pumping his fist together with a crooked smile before he started making his way out.
Yeah,
Bakugo responded as he watched Kirishima walk away.
Good night.
The moment was gone. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to calm his nerves. Maybe it was better if he just stayed quiet.
Chapter 9. Unwelcome Guest. The doorbell was ringing excessively for it being 6 in the morning, causing Riot to bark up a storm. Akio started crying due to all the noise as Bakugo cursed under his breath as he got out of bed to get him. Who the fuck pulled this kind of bullshit so early in the morning? He was going to kill the bastard that had the nerve to do this and made his kid cry. Akio was holding onto him tightly as he made his way out of his room, almost running headfirst into Kirishima, who was making his way to the door.
Were we expecting anyone?
Kirishima asked with a yawn, while his hand reached out to soothe Akio. No, but they better have a good fucking reason, Bakugo grumbled, just before the doorbell was rang once more. I put Riot in my room, Kirishima told him, but they could still hear the muffled barking. But who the hell keeps ringing the doorbell? Bakugo frowned. Kirishima let out a sigh before heading to open the door, Bakugo at his heels, grumbling under his breath. Akio had calmed down a bit, just letting out a couple of sniffles as he buried his head against Bakugo's shoulder. Kirishima opened the front door, finding a middle-aged woman in a black pantsuit. Her face seemed to turn into a frown when she laid eyes on him. Suddenly, Kirishima was hyper-aware of their appearance. His hair was a mess, and he was wearing nothing other than a pair of old sweatpants. Bakugo was wearing an old t-shirt that had holes all over it and a pair of shorts. The most acceptable of the three of them was Akio, who was wearing his dinosaur print footy pajamas, but was still sniffling and close to bursting out in tears once more. Can I help you? Kirishima asked, shifting nervously between them. My name is Sato Megumi. I work for the Hero Commission. I need to have a word with both of you, she said, raising an eyebrow as if waiting to be invited inside. Kirishima blinked twice before moving away from the doorway. Come on in? Sato didn't waste any time, stepping into their home, walking past them, and looking around with a judgeful look in her eyes. Took longer than I expected for one of you to show up, Bakugo mumbled, but Kirishima noticed the way his grip on Akio tightened slightly. We wanted to make sure the initial media storm passed in order to evaluate any form of action, she answered as she turned to look at them head-on. Imagine our surprise when we found out the two of you were dating all along. The emphasis on the word was venomous. So what? Bakugo answered with a frown. Well, if we had known about the two of you dating sooner, the whole situation would have been treated a bit differently if we had been informed. She looked at them in a way that made Kirishima unsure if that would have been a good thing or not. Unless the two of you are lying. Kirishima and Bakugo had known each other for years, to the point that they could almost read each other's thoughts, survey a situation, and end up with the same plan of action. That's what made them a force to be reckoned with when it came to their work as heroes in just about anything they did together. The same understanding passed through them as Sato tried to stare them down, and they both knew exactly what they needed to do. Kirishima stepped forward, a hand going to the small of Bakugo's back, and the blonde leaned against him. We've been dating for years, Kirishima told her, his voice leaving no room for argument. Wanted to keep it private, but since we have a kid together, we decided to finally go public. The fact that you agreed with HC that it would remain a secret meant nothing to you? Her eyes narrowed at them. It would have become harder to hide once we returned to work and needed a daycare. He can't live his whole life inside, Bakugo shot back. He wouldn't be able to have a life if we hid him from the world. You two never discussed your relationship with HC, Sato mused as she looked around the house, her eyes looking for things that would tear their story apart. Bakugo knew she had nothing. He had pictures of him and his friends hanging on one of the walls, most of them with Kirishima. Came with the best friend territory, after all. There is no rule that says relationships have to be disclosed, Bakugo told her without missing a beat. That's true, but it's still considered polite to do, she told him with a bit of a disapproving sigh. Guess that thing was a blessing in disguise or something for the two of you then. What? Kirishima barked. I'm just saying, it must have been something you two may have. His name is Akio. He is a human, a child. Kirishima punctuated every word with a step closer to Sato. His eyes never left her face as the anger started boiling over. You will not refer to him like that again. Eh? Bakugo's tone was full of warning. No, Katsuki, I'm not going to. Bakugo moved quickly, standing a few inches in front of Kirishima with Akio in his arms. Don't get ahead of yourself. We need to know what's going on first, Bakugo whispered, his eyes falling on Akio, who was reaching for Kirishima. Kirishima took a breath, taking Akio into his arms before mumbling. I'm sorry. It's all right. I want to kill her too, Bakugo whispered, his jaw tight, and Kirishima could feel the heat coming from Bakugo's hand. It had been a good idea to take Akio. Well then, Sato said in a bored tone as if she didn't see what was going on in front of her, or the danger she was in with two angry pro-heroes in the same room with her. Now then, back to business, and the reason I'm actually here. You two are having an interview tonight. No, we are fucking not, Bakugo glared. His hands being free made it hard for him to resist the urge to let off a couple of explosions right then and there. You act like you have a choice, she said with a humorless chuckle. You two broke the rule, but we will overlook that if you play along and make sure no one questions the sudden appearance of that child. She gave them a plastic smile at the word. Make it believable, or... Her eyes fell onto Akio, and something flashed across her face for a second that made both Kirishima and Bakugo shiver, both shifting just slightly into more defensive positions. Your publicists have the information. She smiled once more before walking towards the door as if it was her own home. Just like that? Kirishima asked as he and Bakugo followed behind her cautiously. Just like that, Sato told him. Oh, and we will provide childcare during the interview, she added with fake cheerfulness, standing right in front of the door. No, thank you. We'll make our own babysitting arrangements, Bakugo told her, reaching over her and opening the door. Good luck tonight, then, she told them with another fake smile before walking out. Everyone is waiting to see the new happy family. Bakugo slammed the door, turning to Kirishima as he ran a hand through his hair. Fuck, he whispered. The Hero Commission was pissed at them. What are we gonna do? Kirishima asked, wide-eyed. Bakugo looked at his best friend and their kid. We need to play along, eh? It's our only option right now. Kirishima frowned, but nodded. Who should we ask to watch Akio tonight? We can't take him to the interview. It has to be someone that can protect him in case the Hero Commission tries something, Bakugo notes, as his mind starts forming a list of people they could ask, but kept coming back to one person. So our parents are out, Kirishima said, following Bakugo's train of thought. There is one person we could ask. I'll call our publicists. You call him, Bakugo said, both knowing the only person they could trust with their kid. Kirishima fidgeted nervously. He had Akio's diaper bag over one shoulder as Bakugo held the baby. They were dropping Akio off earlier than they wanted, but they had to arrive at the interview an hour early for hair and makeup for some unknown reason. Akio was babbling to himself, pointing at the potted plants near the door, as Kirishima knocked on the door with a sigh. He knew Akio would be safe here, but he couldn't help but worry. We'll pick him up as soon as we can, Bakugo assured him as if reading his thoughts. How are we gonna get through the interview? Kirishima groaned. Just add details to the truth, like we talked. Bakugo shrugged, but his eyes were on the floor. A lot was riding on the interview and little to no room for mistake. Suddenly, the door swung open, and they were greeted with a bright smile, long white hair, and bright red eyes. Hi! Eri exclaimed. Long time no see. I'm so glad you guys are here. She ran forward, hugging Kirishima before turning towards Bakugo and giving him a fist bump. Eri had grown so much, and even though she was now 16 and one of the top students at UA, she would always be the honorary little sister of all of their class. Hey, Eri, Kirishima smiled. Hey, twerp. Bakugo grinned.
Is this Akio?
Eri gasped before her face grew into an even wider smile.
He's so cute, OMG. Come in.
She ushered them through the door.
Dad is here. He was just finishing some grading.
They made their way to the living room, where Eri's schoolwork was spread out on the coffee table.
Sorry for the mess. I'm studying for an English test. Papa doesn't even cut me some slack.
Good luck, Bakugo scoffed. Present Mike isn't home? Kirishima asked politely. He's out doing some grocery shopping, Aizawa said as he walked into the living room, hands in his pockets. It was still weird seeing their former teacher in casual clothing, even years later. Is that the kid? He added with a raised eyebrow, a hint of a smile on his lips. Yeah, Bakugo mumbled. His name is Akio, Bakugo told him. They had told Aizawa about the whole situation from day one, at least as much as they were allowed to at the time. Everything else he needed to know they had told him that very day through the phone as they asked Eraserhead of all people to babysit. The legendary pro agreed without hesitation. Let me know when he's old enough to get into UA. That way I know when it's time for me to retire, Aizawa told them as he looked at Akio carefully as if trying to decide if he was real or not. Thank you for looking after him for us, Kirishima said with a small chuckle, while Bakugo just let out a huff. HC has gone too far so many times, we all know that. The whole system reformed themselves a bit after, but they still stick to some of the old ways. Aizawa sighs, but reaches out for Akio, who looked at him with a bit of suspicion. Do you know anything about that woman that came to our place today? Bakugo asked. Getting some intel from some of my sources. I'll let you know, Aizawa told him with a shrug. Thanks for everything, really, Kirishima said once more, unable to find other words to show how much he meant it. He isn't another problem child, is he? Aizawa asked with a raised eyebrow at Akio. Kirishima chuckled while Bakugo rolled his eyes, trying to fight a smile.
He is so cute, though, Eri told them as she waved at Akio with a smile. Did you guys really rescue him? Were there a lot of villains? Kirishima felt himself tense, suddenly realizing how similar Akio and Eri's rescues were. The big difference was that they knew Eri was there, knew that she needed saving. Akio, on the other hand, no one had known he even existed. No one knew he needed them until they found him by sheer luck. On the upside, at least he hadn't been trapped there for years as Eri had been with Overhaul. Yeah, kicked some villain ass, Bakugo answered, pulling Kirishima away from his thoughts. Tell you more about it later. Eri grinned before turning to Akio. We are going to have a lot of fun together today. Interview is going to be live, Aizawa started, changing the subject as Eri took Akio with a delighted gasp. Yeah, they have us appearing on Hero Talk, an exclusive interview, Kirishima said as he scratched the back of his neck while Bakugo rolled his eyes. You've never been good at those, Aizawa stated as he looked at Bakugo. I know, but I have no fucking choice, do I? Bakugo grumbled. I'm sure you'll be fine, Eri encouraged as she sat on the sofa playing with the baby. You probably don't remember the first interview he did, Kirishima chuckled, earning himself a shove from Bakugo. They didn't even show any of his answers, Aizawa finished for the redhead. And the interviews after that one weren't much better. Bakugo groaned in annoyance. Can we get going? The sooner we leave, the sooner we can come back and pick up the gremlin. Kirishima let out one more chuckle before clearing his throat. Thanks for doing this, Aizawa. He handed over the diaper bag. There are some toys in there as well as some prepped bottles. Just don't make this into a habit, Aizawa said with a sigh, already knowing it probably would. Kirishima leaned down to kiss Akio's cheek. Goodbye, little Pebble. We'll be right back. Pipsqueak, I trust you to keep him safe, Bakugo told Eri before placing a kiss on top of Akio's head. Got it, Booger, Eri responded with a smile. We'll be watching, Aizawa told them. Good luck. Akio cried when he saw that they were leaving without him, panic in his eyes as his dads left him behind with people he didn't know. It broke Kirishima's heart. But they couldn't bring him along, and they couldn't risk making the Hero Commission any angrier than they already were by skipping the interview. Bakugo hesitated once the door closed behind them and they could still hear Akio's crying. Fuck, why is this so hard? Bakugo asked as he started walking. We'll be right back,
He's safer here than anywhere else, Kirishima reassured them both, a hand on Bakugo's shoulder as they made their way to Bakugo's car. This shit better be fast, Bakugo mumbled. Once inside the car, they both let out a sigh at the same time, making both of them laugh softly. What are we even gonna say? Kirishima asked. Make the world believe that we're together. That's the fucking mission, right? Bakugo told him, his heart aching at the fact that it was nothing more than a show for the public. Yeah, Kirishima started, but trailed off for a bit. They asked for pictures of Akio for the interview. I know, my publicist asked me to send her some. Bakugo rolled his eyes. They want us to go public, make him public, and it feels like they're setting us up for something, cats, Kirishima said, his voice sounding more nervous than he intended. Whatever they are planning, we can handle it, Bakugo assured him as he turned the key in the ignition. Let's just get this over with. Kirishima nodded, wishing he could just reach out and grab Bakugo's hand. He pushed the temptation down, trying to focus on the upcoming challenge instead. They had to convince the whole world that they were together.